Hello and welcome to the Media Suite Premiere Pro video recording guide, part 5. In part 4 we looked at importing video and audio to your timeline, video cutaways and importing video or audio only. Part 5 we're now going to look at adding text elements and titles, bullet points and all manner of text elements that you might like to see on your video. Now anybody who's ever done adding text to productions and presentations before will find it quite easy, and once you've actually got used to how Premiere Pro works, it's actually easier than it looks. The first thing we need to think about is actually how we bring in the text element, and the key thing to think about on Premiere Pro is if we go back to our repository, our bin, where we put our elements that we're going to use within the project, where we've got our videos and our graphics and files. Actually, what we need to do first is create our text file, or create our introduction, our words, and it will actually place it in there so we can drop it on the timeline at a point we want it. So the simple thing we need to do now to create our text element is we look along the top bar of Premiere Pro up here, and you'll see, if we go along, you'll see the word title. Now there you go, it would seem reasonably obvious that that one should be the one we need to use. But as I say, you're not adding it directly onto the video line now. We're actually going to create it as an asset that we can use in our project. So the first thing we do is we click title, and we get a drop down menu. Within the drop down menu we've got the term new title, which is obviously what we're going to add, and we've got options, so a default still, a default roll, or a default crawl. Now the easiest one we'll start with today, and the one that most people will use more often than not, is a default still. So we click default still, and this will give us some options. We don't need to change anything because it sets all the width and height and the time-based settings and the aspect ratio based on the overall video setting. So the thing we need to do now is just give it a title. So we'll call this one intro title, and we click OK. And then you'll see that the text window pops up, and this is anybody who's been used to using any Adobe products before. We can grab the corner here, stretch it a little bit wider, move it around the screen a bit, just so it's easier to work with. Right, so as we can see here, we're looking over the video that we actually start with, and we've got our text-based inspector here. We've got lots of different style settings down the bottom. On the left hand side we've got options to type tool, which is what was selected now, and that hovers. We could then select and draw out a type box. We've got our vertical type tool, as you'd expect, that's drawing type down the line. You've got different types of area type tools. Vertical areas, that's typing text within a set space. You can type text to a path, so if you've got a graphic or something on the screen that you want to type your text on, we can do that. And again, vertical paths. But the one we're going to actually concentrate on is typing text. So we use the type tool, which was selected. If it's not selected, just click OK. And we've got a couple of options in here. If we look over the far side, we've got our fill. So that's the fill of our text. We can change the fill once we've actually drawn the text out. So first thing we're going to do is we choose where we want the text to appear on the screen. So this is kind of our safe area, the inner line, and the outer line is the outer safe area on the video. So we choose where we want our text to appear. Now we can have more pieces of text on we want. So I'll draw this like this. This is going to be our title. As you see, as we draw the text box out, over on the right hand side here is our text and title properties options appear, and that gives us the ability to change the font, change the style, and change the colour. So I'm going to pick a font just by clicking your drop down menu, as you'd expect to on any piece of word processing or publishing software. We'll pick a nice bold font, so we're going to use the Gothic one, and we'll choose our font colour. We're going on white screen, so we'll use white. That's where you need to think about your video and where the text is going to sit. So literally all we do now is we've got the text in here, is we type the text we want to appear. There we go, so I've selected this is a title. We can highlight the text, choose our justification. If we come up here, we've got size, and we've got kerning. Now on size, this is the thing that where it takes a little bit of getting your head around, but what we would need to do on here is if we hold the left button down on the mouse over the 100% here and move the mouse down, you'll notice the text gets smaller. If we move the mouse up, you'll notice the text get larger. So we set the text at the size we want. So the kerning is the spacing between the tiles or the text pieces. So again, if we hold our mouse down, drag it down, you'll notice that brings the text closer together, look, and we can stretch it out wider apart. We'll check it wherever we want to. So if we're happy with this, that will be our text. So then we can click back off it. We can click then back on our selection tool on the left hand side here, and we can move the text around and place it wherever we want it on the screen. So I'm going to place this text just slightly over to the right hand side, thinking about the background that's on as well, and that is our first piece of text added, and that we will then be able to add to our timeline. Now what we can do now, if we close the text inspection box, this will be created. So we click close, and we scroll down here into our project bin again where all our assets are, and you'll notice here is our title text, and this adding a title text is pretty much the same as adding any other thing to your video. We can double click it to go back into and edit it if we want to. If we're happy with it, all we would do is literally grab it, we'll move it, and if we put it onto video line 1 here, or if it goes on at video line 1, it'll actually take a portion of the video out, but if we put it on video line 2, it becomes a cutaway and we'll overlay. So there you go. So if we let go of that text on there, we can see that it appears over the first part of the video, and if we move our playhead, there we go, we can see the text is on the screen over the video. What we can also do with that, we select the text box here, we can actually drag the text out to stay on the screen a little bit longer if we so choose. So again, as we move the video through here, look, you can see the text stays on that little bit longer. So that is your first piece of text added to Adobe Premiere Pro, and the same would happen or occur if you want to add text anywhere else in the video. Now what you might want to do, if we click on our timeline window here and we click our plus button, we can zoom in on the timeline so we can get a bit more accurate to where we place things. What we might want to do, so if we move across here, is if we imagine this is a lecture here, and so if we get the playhead moving along through the video, so we move it to after the title. You see here, look, the title disappears. What we might decide here is that we've mentioned some key points and we want some text to appear. So key point 1, key point 2. So we're highlighting a concept. And again, the simple way of doing that is we're going to title, new title, default still. We call this key point 1. Click OK. We can then put our text however we want it to appear in here. So we select a window and we would type our text in. So key point 1, just for example purposes, we'll justify it down the central. We can change again, left click on the size here, we could make it larger. If we wanted, we could make the space in between the letters a little bit wider. Whatever we think suits the actual production best, we can actually, while it's highlighted, we can go in and change the font style again. So you might want to just use one for your title and a nice basic one for your fonts themselves. So we're going to put key point 1 in there on the Canada, and we could also, if we really wanted to, we could change the colour. So we might decide we want a nice red font here. Once we're happy with that, we click back on this selection tool, click off, which allows us to move the text to the point we want it to appear roughly. So there we go. So we're going to have key point 1 appearing just here. And then we close the text or title window again, as we did before, by clicking the red X, and we'll see that it appears in here. And this is where we can now, by zooming in on the timeline, we can add text into portions of it to appear in quite quick succession, as we would on a PowerPoint slide. So we drag the one we want, put it upon our video line. So let's put it in here. And there we have key point 1. Now what we would do now, depending on how long we want key point 1 to stay on the screen for, we could move it along. To here, and we could add our second title. So we go again. What we could do is we could edit this one so it looked like we kept key point 1 on and it appeared with key point 2. So if we double click on it, click on our text option here, and we go down a line, so if we drag, try again, right, we'll close that out a moment. Let's just make sure we've not messed with that one. Excellent. So we get to the end of where key point 1 disappears, or we could leave key point 1 on for a moment, and we could then create key point 2. So we get title, new font, default still, and we'll call this one key point 2. And because we can still see the key point 1 on, this helps us position key point 2. So we draw our text box out here. We type into the box key point 2. This is where we'd highlight the text, centrally justify it. We make sure we've got the same font as we used before. So remember Canada. We would choose the colour if we wanted the same colour, so we could have it red again. A slightly different shade of red that time. And then we change the size to bring it up in line with, or if we decide it wasn't quite as important, bring it down a bit. And we could change the spacing between the font. And once we're happy with it, we click on the selection tool again, click off it, we can move that around and decide where we want that to appear. And again we close this window here, and we get our text for key point 2. We drag it over, we can put it on top of key point 1 so it's see-through, or we could put it on video line 3. So I'm going to decide I want it here. It automatically snaps to the playhead, but what we see there is that what we get there is a fade over from key point 1 to key point 2. Now what we might decide is that actually we don't want it to overwrite that one, is we actually want it to appear above. So we could stretch key point 1 out. So here if we put it on video line 3, we get key point 1 and key point 2 appearing together. Now this is where we get a bit more ingenious again, as we could add more video lines, so we can add extra points. So we could right click and add a track. We can add another video track, so we decide how many we want. If we wanted 2, click OK, and we've got video line 4 and video line 5. So now we could go into, we might decide we want key point 3 to appear here. So we're into title, new title, default still, and we'll call this one key point 3 and click OK. Brings us into the same window again. We can see where it's going to position because the other one's on there. So we drag our window out again. We make sure the font's set to whatever we want it at. So do we want it the same font we've had before? If we want to use the same colour that we've already used before, you get the dropper tool there, and we just hover over anything on the screen that's got a colour. So if we want to choose this previous font at the top, clicking it, and that gives us the exact same colour. So we go back into this box and we type key point 3. Highlight this text, we centrally justify it again so it lines up. We could increase the size to whatever we want it at. If you notice in here, you also get a font size on here, so you can put your numbers in there as well. We increase the kerning, so right click and hold, and we get that to wherever we want it at. So 176 on the font and 10 on the kerning, and we click back on this selection tool, click off our font, and we can now move key point 3 down the screen a bit. So if we were doing this for a PowerPoint slide, we would perhaps spend a bit more time and get them all coming up at the same size. But as you can see from here, we can see how you can start to bring in PowerPoint points as if they were on a transition on your PowerPoint slide. So if we're happy with the font, we close the window again, and it again down in our asset window down here in our project bin, we see it appears there, and we drag it with a left click and we move it to the playhead, and we'll now put it on line 4 for video. So now if we move the playhead back, we go from an introduction title with the video playing in the background to key point 1, key point 2 appears, and then key point 3 appears, and the video still continues to play in the background, which is how we want it. Now if we want all the points to disappear at the same time, this is where we need to select the final track. Because we might not want key point 3 to extend on unless it's a point of note on its own. So what we could do is snap the playhead to the end there. What you also find, if you double click on any of your points on your timeline, it takes you into your editing tool again, which is brilliant. Let me come back off here. Click on this window, now we find that Premiere's just been a little bit awkward, but normally we would find that as we hover over this, we can actually drag this back as we did extending the previous one, and we can make it the full length as we did before. Go have a quick look at how to do that. It's not to worry too much if we can't, and we'll investigate that at a later date. So we can now come into our video. If we zoom out on our play bar here, so we are by pressing the minus key, so we see the video at its full length. We scroll all the way back to the beginning. If we press play, we can see how this plays and how the text appears and then disappears. There's the title, it's disappeared, and we're now talking about our key points. They start to appear. We then see back to our video. We move into video line at number 2. We'll then get our cutaway appearing in a moment. So if we move that on a little bit, look, here we go. Our cutaway appears. It goes back. to video line 1, and we get the audio carry on from video line 2. So there you go. So there's all the edits we've made so far, and now we've seen how we can add in text into the mixture to add a little bit of interest and start to add your titles. So in the next video of the piece, we'll now be looking at adding pictures and video to actually have them on screen and have video or picture in picture. Again, this can be very good for bringing in PowerPoint slides that you've saved as JPEGs, and also allows you to bring other videos in, so you could be almost like a talking head, so you could actually pause at some point and have another video playing while some information is actually showing on screen. And in the final video after that, we're looking at fades and transitions with a short video then to show us how to export files for final production, which you can then upload to YouTube or Vimeo for you to place your links into your virtual learning environment. So there you go. That has been Premiere Pro, the Media Suite guide, and showing you how to create text. Thank you very much.